I'm doing my interview paper on a 69-year-old female that is currently residing in Mount Ida, Arkansas. She was born December of 1957 in a small town in Iowa. She had two parents that had Native American lineage. She is full-blooded Native American, and both of those parents were born and raised in Oklahoma on Native land. She has two brothers, one sister. The two brothers have passed away, and the one sister is non-existent in her life. Two children, one is 44, one is 49. The one that is 44 is currently living close to her. The one that is 49 is not. She is 4 hours away from her. She also, with her husband, raised one of the grandchildren due to one of the parents being in prison. She moved quite frequently as a young child due to the fact that her parents were low income, so her father was constantly always chasing a job down. So she moved from state to state, so there was not a whole lot of stability into that relationship, into her earlier childhood years, and she was having to, of course, never make friends. So her friends were her older brothers. Her sister did not come along until she was almost 15, 16 years old, so there's not really a big relationship there as far as being raised. I believe brothers were somewhere around 2-3 years apart, and 4 years apart. The oldest was about 4 or 5 years apart from her. She met her husband when she was 17 years old, and they got married in 1972. Her husband followed her family. They originally met in Little Rock, where they both worked as assistant managers in Burger King. Her husband, when she moved, followed her up there. They got married, and neither one of them graduated high school or ended up going to college or anything else. Had their first child approximately 5 years later. So both of them worked in fairly low income jobs until both of them went ahead and got their GED, went back to school, and eventually she became a hospice nurse. She started out as a CNA assistant, where basically she was the one that was making all the decisions on where the CNAs went and so on. And after several years of school, worked herself up into a position where she was the personal nurse for the pain management doctor that was for Arkansas Hospice. I'm sorry, Hospice Home Care. She eventually did go to Arkansas Hospice, but only stayed for maybe about a year, and then ended up turning around and came back to Hospice Home Care. She was one of the first initial employees with Hospice Home Care in 1992. Continued there until health conditions caused her to retire. In 2020, I think it was 2020, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and had to have a bilateral mastectomy. And breast cancer was fairly prominent in the family history, so she also has a fear and a worry about her daughter coming and getting to the point where she's diagnosed with breast cancer also. Her big major change, though, is the recent passing of her spouse in September of 2023. Her spouse was diagnosed with bladder cancer, of course, because of her extensive history with medical problems, and also the fact that she was a hospice nurse. She was very fluent in what was fixing to occur and what did occur. And eventually she was the one that stayed at home, helped nurse him through that diagnosis. She was the one that took care of all of his chemo treatments, appointments, and so on. And eventually, when he was put on hospice, she was the main caregiver in the home with that hospice. Due to him passing away in the home, she just recently made the decision to sell her home, and her son is building a house which is going to include a mother-in-law suite onto the home, because her fear is that she's no longer going to be able to take care of herself because of the breast cancer ravaging her body and causing all kinds of other issues other than, the initial breast cancer. So she is going to do that. She made the decision to stay closer to Little Rock based on the fact that most of her doctors are there at Carti and so on, and her daughter lives in Harrison, which is 4.5 hours away from her current situation. She does have 2 grandchildren and 6 great grandkids, so there's also that situation for her. What she has heard, that the themes that mostly comes into play with her is the gender norm of, the husband earning more than what she did. Obviously he earned quite a much of her, so now that she is currently not working and he has passed away, her main situation is that she is on Medicaid and Social Security survivor benefits. So she's having to adjust to having an income that was quite higher than hers to adjusting to an income that's not nearly as high. Another life course perspective, of course, the other life course perspective is shaped by her earlier events in her home, where she was in a low-income house. She got married early, she had children early, so most of her life was revolved around the fact that she needed to prioritize her family responsibilities. Another proof of that is raising a grandchild later on in life while one of the children was in prison. She also ended up having that cumulative disadvantage based on the fact that she, had those earlier experiences. One of the other issues that she has, or one of the other themes that she has in this is gender stratification and social class. That basically is that she earned less than he did, and partly it was because of the caregiving work that she had to do, and because of the fact that she was lower paid based on the fact that she was a CNA and then went into nursing and so on. Her husband was an electrical engineer for First Electric Co-op. So obviously he made a lot more money than what she did. Her lower upclass bringing meant that she had fewer resources to invest in her college education and her savings. Due to the fact that she also is a breast cancer survivor, she has to look at the theme of health and bereavement based on her health, because everything at this point revolves around her scans and making sure that everything is okay with her scans and so on, and then also bereaving the loss of a spouse that she was married to since she was 17 years old, and by the time that he did pass away, that was almost 50 years. They were just a few months shy of their 50th wedding anniversary. She does struggle with depression. She does struggle with the fact that she did not really truly realize how much she loved her husband, or how much she depended on him, or how lonely it was going to be after he passed away. And that was one of the main deciding factors for her to go ahead and sell the home, because the home was rather large. She felt like she couldn't take care of it on her own, and just the bad memories in the home made it to the point where she was like, I'm done, I've had enough, I want out. Obviously another theme for her is social support and the public support. Obviously she's on Social Security, she's on Medicaid and Medicare benefits that helps her with her medical situations, and the fact that her husband made more money than she did, she's on his survivor benefits instead of her actually being on her own disability benefits, because his survivor benefits are, I believe she stated, $300 to $400 more a month than what hers was. So she's looking at also those public policy programs. In the long run, what I realized from this is that bereavement of a spouse affects a lot more than what we originally, think of. We think of, okay, well, they're going to pass away, and, the person is just going to go ahead and, go on with their life, and that's where it's going to be. And the fact that she is almost 2, 3 years later still struggling with having to adjust to him not being there, that her whole life basically got turned upside down because the home that she loved and bought and raised children in is no longer there because she feels like she can't be in that home because of him not being there, and the quote unquote bad memories of him passing away, and that she feels like he is around every corner basically. So for her, those are things that definitely affects her. So as I'm learning this, bereavement of a spouse is a major issue in aging.